Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sales Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Daniel McComber, and with me today is Taryn Neves and Jeremy Neves.
Yep.
This is a unique episode because we've got a couple here, and I call them an entrepreneur couple. You guys kind of laugh at that a little bit. But I wanted to have you guys on today to talk a lot about, what you've done individually, but also as a couple, how entrepreneurism has helped you in your marriage, your family, individually, kind of all of it. So
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
I love it.
Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Excited to be here.
So kind of getting started, a little bit of background on both of you. How long have you guys been married for?
Almost 13 years.
13 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
awesome. And remind me, are you guys from Utah or?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Both
so you
from
met
Utah.
here.
Yep.
Fantastic. And so over 13 years, how many kids do you have?
Two.
Two
Two
kids.
kids.
Fantastic. And I saw a video the other day that they got like the mullets. And
So our 3-year-old's
Yes.
got a stellar, like probably the best mullet you've ever seen, and then our 8-year-old just got long hair. He's
Just
all
long
about
hair.
the long
Yes.
hair.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So you guys are married for a long time. You have kids. And then over that course of 13 years, you guys have done a lot and a lot of different things, which is
Yeah.
pretty classic in entrepreneurism. And so kind of getting started, Jeremy, you started out in door-to-door,
I
right?
did.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how that went.
Yeah, so I came home from a mission, and I just immediately jumped into selling satellite TV, direct TV, dish network, internet and phone products, door to door.
Yeah.
Selling for a company up in Salt Lake. I got home in June, started selling for that company, sold the rest of that summer here just locally in Utah. And then all in the off season, I did events and door to door. And then by the next summer, I went from a sales rep to a regional manager, actually. So I had recruited 5 managers, and we had
Wow.
60 guys total, and went out for our first summer. What was unique about this is that it was the first summer that this door-to-door company had done a summer program.
Oh.
So they hadn't sent out of state. They had only done events and door-to-door
Yeah.
here locally. And
Yeah.
if you're in the space, there's a lot of logistics. You're getting apartments for your reps. You're getting apartments for your technicians. You're getting storage for your equipment. All the different details you got to figure out. And it requires market research. You can't just throw a dart at a map and be like, that's a good market,
Yeah.
depending on, what services and products and everything else there. And so it was a great learning experience. It was probably the toughest summer I've ever had in sales, being my first summer. But I was a brand new regional manager, and they were a brand new company. And so it was just a disaster waiting to happen. We started with 60 guys and gals. We had a few girls. My sister was one of them. I had recruited a lot of family and friends, put my name on the line.
Yeah.
And we went out, and I'll tell you, the first day we knocked one of our markets, we had 26 sales and not one qualified. And it was this rude awakening, like, oh,
One
shoot,
of
did we
those
choose one of the
markets.
wrong areas? It was like Redding, California or something like that.
Oh, boy.
It was terrible. And anyway, we started with 60 reps, and we finished the summer with 12.
Wow.
And so terrible attrition.
Yeah.
We're getting eviction notices on our apartments, and
Learning pains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
installs were way far out. There was just all sorts of issues there. And so I came home from that summer, and the crazy thing is I still saw the opportunity. I saw what door-to-door could be.
Yeah.
I had, all growing up, I'd gone from job to job to job, just progressing slowly from a newspaper guy to mowing lawns to window washing for somebody to starting my own window washing to just moving up. But there was always a ceiling. And when I got into door-to-door, I realized there's no ceiling here. There's truly unlimited opportunity. And as a rep, you can progress to a manager, and then you can leverage your time and your energy and your resources and your skills. And same as a regional manager. And you can there's all sorts of opportunity to grow and continue to grow. And so I loved that, but I was so worried about that experience that we had.
Yeah.
And so when I came home, it was, hey, I want to do this, but if my name is on the line, I've got to protect my reputation. And so I didn't know much about business. Well, I didn't know as much as I thought I needed to know in order to start a business, but I felt like I needed to. So I left that company and started my own in September of that following year.
Dang,
So
that's ambitious, man.
it was quick, from a rep to a manager, regional manager to starting your own company in 18 months, I think.
Wow, that's
And
crazy.
so,
but you just saw the vision
I did.
and you were sold on it, and you said, "Hey, this is what I got to do to make sure that it's done the right way."
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So, I mean, did you always kind of know that, like, as you were getting started, did you have an idea like, "Hey, I want to be an entrepreneur," or "Hey, I want to work for myself," or was it just kind of something that fell in your lap?
Growing up, so my dad was an entrepreneur, and he did everything he could to talk us out of being entrepreneurs. He's
Oh,
like,
no
go
way.
to school, be a doctor, be a lawyer, do some profession. You don't want this life.
Yeah.
Work never stops. It never ends. And I heard him, but at the end of the day, is like from a young age, I'd go to, my neighbors lived on the golf course. I lived across the street from the golf course. My neighbors lived on the golf course. I'd go knock on their door at 8 years old and ask them if I could get the golf balls out of their backyard.
Oh.
I'd take them, I'd go clean them at the golf course, and I'd sell them out in front of the golf course. Like from a very young age, my
Yeah.
dad taught me to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right?
He was teaching you lessons.
He was.
And they were shaping your life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he was also telling you,
But that's
Don't
not what
do
you want to
this.
do. That's not what you want to do.
Yeah.
But, in high school or in school, I never felt like I was smart enough or that I understood stuff to the level everybody else did. I felt like kids always knew this is what I'm going to do when I graduate. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to college, and this is where I'm going to want to go. This is what I want to study. And I was always like, I want to be a professional basketball player, or a professional football player. Like, you do that in elementary school. Like, that was still in my mind in high school, and I wasn't even great at sports, and I was teeny. But
Yeah.
I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I think that it was just the natural progression for me.
yeah, well, the opportunity came up and you gravitated towards it
Yeah.
from what you learned growing up and everything.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What an amazing beginning. Now, you guys met soon after that year, or how many years did you go into door-to-door
So
starting
that
your
was,
company?
I started in 2009. We met in 2011. So yeah, 2 years after I started the business. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So 2 years in a business, I mean, that's usually like a hard part of it. So
Oh, yeah.
so you're going through the thick of it, still trying to grow the company.
Oh, yeah.
Then you guys meet. How did you feel? Actually, I'm going to show it. How did you feel like, all right, so this guy owns this door-to-door company, and I mean, if you guys are both from Utah, okay, he's kind of a tool, maybe, I don't know, like, or at least he employs lots of them.
Yeah.
Like, how did you feel about that idea of him being an entrepreneur?
To be completely honest, I was 20. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, at that time, I mean, I was 20. I was hanging out with return missionaries who didn't know what they were doing in life,
Yeah.
And so meeting him who had his shit together and knew where he was going, I was just like, oh, sweet. Like, that's attractive.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Other than that, genuinely, at the time,
She didn't know.
I
much
was
of what
like,
going on.
I don't know. I'm just here for the ride.
Yeah.
I mean, first year though was a really rude awakening
When you guys got married.
when we got married.
Yeah.
And
Did you
we
warn
go
her at
out.
all? Actually, this is something I want to hit on for a second here. Like, I feel like, as you know, a lot of door-to-door reps and entrepreneurs, they'll be dating and everything will be great. Like, hey, there's good money. But like, it's kind of hard to show someone you're dating, like the actual behind the scenes crap that goes on. So I feel like people do a really bad job, myself included, by the way, of explaining to their significant other as they're going into like this lifelong partnership, like, hey, this is how I live and operate and work. And it's really hard and stressful and I'm always working. Did you do a okay job of explaining that? It doesn't sound like you did, huh?
No, not really.
no.
No, and I didn't for years. I don't think. I think.
Oh, no way.
The thing is that I think there's this part, and it's probably similar with most entrepreneurs, that you are overly optimistic and you're super ambitious, and you think, hey, I mean, the story I kept telling her is, hey, next year everything's going to be different. Once we get to this level, everything will be different. It
Yeah.
won't be this way.
That's a bad
We'll be
lie
good.
to
We'll be
tell
good. We'll be
yourself.
good. And I believed it. Like, I truly believed I'm going to get to this point and my business is going to be in a certain place. My life's going to be in a certain place and we're going to be totally fine.
Yeah.
And it just got bigger and more stressful and heavier and more time consuming and more challenges and more issues the bigger we grew. And so the reality was I finally had to check in and be like, okay, the only way this changes is if I change the way I do it.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, Chris
yeah, it was
Williamson said, proof that humanity is stupid is the lie that we tell ourselves that it'll be easier tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Yeah.
just
100%.
such a dumb thing. But
Yeah.
so you're going through the thick of it. You guys get married. Were you staying local or
No.
you're the owner of the company, but are you traveling around a bunch?
So by year 3, when we got married, I had a manager. I think we only had 3 or 4 offices. So I had managers in place. I was essentially the regional manager. So our first year of marriage, I went out for the first 30 days. She drove out with me. We went to the Midwest, and
nice.
we got an apartment. We slept on an air mattress because we're trying to save money.
Yeah.
In that apartment that was temporary, so we didn't want the whole 3-month, or 4-month furniture package. So
Yeah.
we literally stayed on an air mattress, and she just hung out with her phone and Wi-Fi and Netflix while I'd go out and I'd run the meeting, while I was there. I'd go out and sell and train with guys and
So
whatever.
that's the salesman explanation of what happened. It's always interesting talking to the wives, though, because it's very similar. I got married, and then 2 weeks after our honeymoon, we left for the summer, right? Long story behind that, but we left for the summer. It was only my second summer ever, and same kind of thing. We had furniture, thankfully, but I left my wife at home like all day. Something that guys forget to do is like, hey, I work like 12-hour days.
Yes.
And that's something that's like, I'm on the doors for 6 to 8 hours, but no, like the meeting and traveling and all that, it's like a 12-hour day. So how did that go for you? Like, you just got married, you kind of have expectations as a newly, wedded person.
Yeah.
And then this is what you're being dealt with.
Yeah. How was that for me? That's a great question. It was a lot driving out there, being stuck at home with no car, nowhere to go.
Oh, no
and
car.
Just like there was a Walmart like a mile away. So sometimes I would like walk to Walmart for like, entertainment.
Yeah.
And I walk back. But being there with him and having all the people, all the men in the office, and they were all young men, I just found it enjoyable to kind of be the woman of the house. I'd like make them dinner and we'd have little barbecues at the pool on Sundays or whatever. But it was a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
It was a
tough.
lot.
Yeah.
We
Well,
fought
it's
a
so
lot.
funny.
I felt very alone. It was not easy.
Yeah.
It was one of the most challenging times of our marriage. Our first year was hell.
Yeah.
Just
same.
adjusting.
Same.
People are always like, oh, we're in the honeymoon phase. First year we were like immediately at each other's throats. So now add taking her away from her family, all of her friends,
Yeah.
putting her in a house in isolation.
Let me just isolate you.
And then fighting
Yes.
on top of that.
It
And
won't
then-
make the problem worse.
Oh
No.
my gosh.
No,
Yeah.
it's so funny. Every
was
time
tough.
someone would say like, "Oh yeah, first year's best," I want to kill them. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
you're psycho. Because no, but we put ourselves in that position.
Yeah.
But it's also because we knew what it would lead to, right? We had a vision of like, hey, I know what the sacrifice now will lead. Do you feel like you guys kind of shared that vision? Maybe not at the beginning, but over time you were able to kind of share a vision of what the sacrifice would lead to?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I felt like that from the beginning. It was like, hey, we're putting in this time and then there's going to be a payoff, right? And I
Yeah.
had seen that at the different levels by sacrificing our desire to be home during summer, being out,
Yeah.
but it's hard in the moments sometimes to realize that this is going to pay off.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's still that question, is it?
Yeah.
Because when you're running a business, there's threats every single day that's like, this could end our business. This could, end our career. And so it could be not worth it. It could have been a waste of time. But we just had to keep showing up and hoping that it would.
Yeah. So that's the first summer. You get through that. And then second summer, it progressively gets better, right?
Yeah.
Was there like a certain time where there's like a catalyst event that kind of like brought the business up to where ultimately it ended? Because you said that it got to a point where it was pretty dang big.
Yeah. So that was year 3. By year 5, I was no longer having to travel out. It was just as now I had managers, regional managers, VPs,
Yeah.
and they were managing the recruiting. I was still involved in certain recruiting. I was still involved in certain training, and I would do one visit to each office.
Sure. Yeah.
And when I got to that point, it's like, okay, go spend 3-4 days, do a day in the office, take them all out to dinner, take them out to a movie,
Yeah.
take them to a baseball game, do something like that, show my face, launch an incentive, whatever.
Yeah.
And I had really good support at that point.
Nice.
Once we got to there, it became totally different.
Yeah, it's like it's a completely different job. It's you have a different title.
Working
everything.
on the business instead of working in the business.
Yeah.
A lot more. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so during that phase, I guess, what were some motivating factors other than the business growing to a point where you could take a couple steps back? Between like your family and the two of you, what were some kind of motivating factors of why you wanted to be more, I guess, sustainable or kind of more structured?
Yeah. I mean, the time freedom, one,
Yeah.
right? The ability to actually be there. I think the biggest thing, there's the time aspect of being an entrepreneur, running a business and whatever else, but it's like the mental space. I'd come home and it's like, there's nothing I really could do at that point, but my mind was completely gone. I was there, but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I think that's, the promise that I made for so many years was, hey, next year, once we get to this place, everything's going to be better. And it just didn't. Even when I wasn't involved on the travel aspect of it, now I'm working on the business. Well, there was bigger challenges.
Yeah.
You know, you're dealing with legal issues, you're dealing with structural issues, you're dealing with operational issues, you're dealing with financial challenges and cash flow situations. And so it was just finally realizing that, like, hey, business is always going to be here and it's always going to be a challenge and nothing's going to change there.
Yeah.
But like, how can I start coming home and showing up in a way that like you can actually have some of my attention,
Yeah.
and we can actually connect and we can actually do things as a family, and I'm not like somewhere else.
Yeah. So a couple of follow-up questions about that. Taryn, where do you feel, well, I should say, did you come to that conclusion on your own that you needed to start showing up, or was it something that you guys had talked about?
Might have yelled about, right?
Probably yelled about.
You're not here.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't like a healthy conversation. I think it was more like, you're not here. I get zero attention. Like, what's going on? And then he, bless his heart, he just figured it out. I do think, though, door-to-door sales is a really hard industry, but what kept us going was we traveled a lot. So, like, in the off season, we could go, we were on incentive trips or taking the team out or whatever. So we did eventually get time to like go do something fun together. And then it'd be like hustle and grind, time together, hustle and grind. And for a long time, that was how we sustained a healthy relationship. It was like, okay, we'll grind for 3 months. I won't see him for 3 months, but then we'll go on a trip for 2 weeks. And then, and it worked until it didn't.
Yeah. So I think what happens a lot of times, especially when the company gets to a point where you're taking on so many different roles, right? You're wearing different hats and you're taking on challenges that you never expected. Like dealing with rejection on the doors is pretty simple compared to having to work out a multi-million-dollar deal with a contractor or something, right? And it's really difficult, I think, for business owners, entrepreneurs to have a job like that requires so much, and then to come home and give time. That's one thing, but also know how to act with their spouse. Example, it's like you act so many different ways with so many different people in the business, and you get home, it's like, well, I can't. You have this battle where you're like, do I talk to my spouse about the things, the goods and the bads that I've experienced, or am I not supposed to talk about business at all, and I'm supposed to just like be here? But business is kind of like my entire life. So did you guys go through anything like that?
Yeah.
I'm curious what your perspective is.
Yeah.
I know what mine is.
Yeah, so I'll go first. I feel like we definitely went through that. And for years, the story I was told and the mentorship I received was like, hey, she doesn't need to have any of that stress. She doesn't need to have any of that worry. You know, you need to come home. You need to carry that and bury that and deal with it here.
Right.
Yeah.
Bury it's the big thing. And so it did. But the reality is she feels it.
Yeah.
And it creates the tension between us. If I'm afraid, right? I think as a man, we're not supposed to be afraid. And we definitely don't want our wives to know that we're afraid, because then they're going to have fear, then they're not going to feel safe, and then they're not being protected. And it's our main role and responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So for years I did that, and I didn't show these fears, whatever, but it finally got to a point where it's like, look, I know this is already having an impact. She's already feeling it. She's already seeing it. And I took a chance and was just like, hey, I'm terrified. And I actually broke down. I got emotional. I was like, I think that I might lose the business. This is going on. Maybe not the best way to do it when you're doing it your first time. But I was shocked at the way she was able to receive that, because it gave her the opportunity to show me how strong women really are.
Yeah.
How much she already knew that I was already there.
They
She didn't maybe know the specifics,
Yeah.
but she knew shit was going down. Right. And then it's like, hey, and by the way, regardless of what happens, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And that was my biggest fear in all of it.
Yeah.
And that she would be okay. And she was like, look, we got this. We're in this together. And that changed everything. So I am a huge proponent of, you do share those things.
Yeah.
There might be certain details of the day that you're just like, I'm done talking about this and I don't need to, let's check this at the door and deal with. But like, if you're dealing and going through some heavy stuff, you got to be able to trust your partner. If you're choosing one person to be with for the rest of your life, you damn well better be able to confide in them and be a partnership.
I love that. Dan, let's hear your perspective on that.
I mean, there were a lot of fights and he hit a lot, and it was challenging because if you're not connected, you're not connected. Like you can't be connected and hide.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it would cause these things, and I'd ask questions, or sometimes he would share and I would respond poorly. Right. But for me, it became, I didn't, and I think this adds to it. It's not like I had some career that I was off doing myself. It was like, this is this is where all my eggs are in this relationship. Like
Yeah.
genuinely, I was like a server at a restaurant for a while, just like random jobs, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, okay, I can support him the best I can. And so I took the relationships in his business as my own. So the wives of the sales guys, or even his business partners, like I began to create my own relationship with them. So it was, we're a team and we love and we care about all of you. And this is our world, right?
Wow.
It's not two separate things. And once I started to do that, I didn't help build the business as far as the logistics, but it did help grow the business in other areas. And then I could help show up for him in that way. Right.
Yeah.
So, even though it was hard and painful, it brought the connection, and that's all I wanted.
Brought the connection. That's awesome. So it sounds like it took, the catalyst event for you breaking down and just like starting to share. And then you also putting an effort as well, like, hey, I'm going to make relationships where I can. I'm going to be supportive where I can, right? So, I mean, that sounded like one specific event that you kind of had in that example. Taryn, I mean, when he kind of broke down like that, like, what was that like to receive something like you have this guy who men look up to, right? Who's an authority figure in many, many aspects and runs a business, and he's breaking down to you. What was that like?
I mean, really beautiful, honestly. I think it's
a cool way to explain it.
Like, I don't know. How else do you respond to somebody when they're breaking down to you? It just, call it nurture or nature or whatever. It's like, this is the person you love more than anything. And we've fought to build what we've built. He's fought to build what he's built. And like, I'm just going to show up for you. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
I'm sure there are ways after the initial breakdown. In fact, I know there were, where he had the initial break, be like, you told me you'd support me. And I was like, I'm trying, you know?
Trying to figure it
like,
out.
At that
not
moment,
perfect, it's messy.
At that moment when that conversation happened, it was over the phone. And I was just like, babe, we got this. Like, you know?
I love how you said that. It's not perfect, it's messy, but it was taking steps in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
I love how you mentioned that. I mean, one thing that I've learned so much from my wife over the years is that women's emotional intelligence is insane. And something that our mutual friend Jimmy mentioned once at a conference I was at is he just said, they know. And I was just like, that's crazy, because the more I confide in my wife, the more I realize she does know. She might not know the specifics of what's going on, but women, they know if something's up, right?
Yeah.
And I guess kind of a follow-up question with that is like, if you know something's up, like you don't necessarily want to pry and pick at it, but at the same time, is that kind of what kind of causes a little bit of disconnect? It's like, he's not sharing with me what's going on, but I know something's up.
Yeah, well, I think I tried that and it didn't work.
You try to pick at it.
You try to pick it. Like, I know you're being an asshole. What's going on? Right? Like, I don't know. And it doesn't work. It just pisses him off more and makes him hide more.
Yeah.
And for men, I mean, it does. You guys are trying to protect and provide, just like Jeremy said. And so when the wife comes in and is like, what is wrong with you? You're not providing. Of course, you guys go into shame. And it's like, let me defend and like dig my heels in more.
Yeah.
That's just the masculine way, which is fine. Right. And so how can I shift and move around this? It's entrepreneurship. It's shifting and moving and knowing where the next step is. Right.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's awesome. Thank you guys for being so open with like the situation that you guys went through. So the business is growing. You guys kind of get to this point where you're working together, right? And things are pretty healthy. And then ultimately, did you sell that business? I mean, satellite was a huge thing for a while, and then it wasn't.
Gone.
So
it's gone.
How did the end work out?
Yeah.
For you?
So it's actually interesting. We were forced. There was kind of a gun put to our head, but for 3 years prior to that event, we had been meeting with private equity and whatnot. There wasn't a ton of value in that business. It's a good learning lesson in the sense that like your value is in your salespeople, and there wasn't a ton of recurring. Most of our money was paid up front, and so to a private equity, you're worth 2-3 multiple. It's not really. And when we're growing at 50% a year, it's like we're 18 months before we make that money. So why would we sell, right?
Right.
So it didn't necessarily make sense at that point because we made all of our money up front. It was a cash heavy business. But what happened was AT&T came in and basically called us one day at a retreat we were at in Vegas and just said, hey, we have an initiative. We want to consolidate the door-to-door space, which we saw they were doing. They had forced multiple people to do different things.
Yeah.
And they said, you need to merge we were number 2 out of 6,000 dealers. You need to merge with number 1. And we said, what if we don't? They said, we'll find a way to terminate you.
Wow.
So we basically were like, okay.
Sweet.
So we went through and we worked a deal to, merge with them and have them take over. And we exited the business at that point. And
Nice.
18 months later, they were out of business. So
No kidding.
basically, yeah.
So, like, did you see the writing on the wall at all? Or?
Well, yeah, I mean, satellite's been dying, right?
Yeah.
As internet picks up in the rural areas, the over the air, all of your different TV options with YouTube and
Sure.
Fubo and all that, we saw the writing on the wall.
Okay.
There's obviously some uniqueness with sports packages and contracts they had, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, for the most part, satellite TV is ancient history. And we saw that coming, so it was still hard.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like, we were making couple $1 million a year, taking
Yeah.
home, my partner and I, and we had golden handcuffs. It's hard to just be like, yeah, we'll just be done. But we, for a few years, have been looking for ways to diversify, praying for other opportunities, and we were given it.
Yeah.
We just didn't like the way that it was packaged,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so
Those
it
golden
was
handcuffs
the
sometimes
best
are
thing.
comfortable a little bit.
100%.
Ugh.
100%. But it was exactly what we needed, and so
It was perfect, huh?
Yeah.
So you kind of forced out, and then it was kind of an awakening, like, okay, cool, like we're out now, and we got to make it work.
Yeah.
So that's another huge transitional period. It sounds like in your guys' lives,
Mm-hmm.
right? So were you unemployed for a little bit? Like,
Oh,
did
yeah.
you have anything going on? Or
Oh no,
yeah.
yeah.
So did you take that time to travel? What was that like for you guys during that? Like, you go from grinding and working your butt off to nothing.
Yeah.
That was an incredibly stressful time.
Oh, was it really?
Jeremy, actually, here's the thing, because he made that call, and that's when that call we're talking about happened, where he called and just broke down.
That was the second time.
It was
but yeah.
it was when they called and were like, you're merging, or we're terminating you, right? And obviously I had felt the emotion and the weight of everything that he had carried for so long and poured his heart and soul into this thing.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, hey, we're gonna figure this out. So I remember he's like, I just gotta figure out what I'm gonna do. So I'm like, go. Like, he went to San Francisco and just like walked the streets and walked into random businesses to like try and figure out who he was, what he wanted to do. And I
I
was
did
like,
some
do
random
it.
stuff. Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was just like we
Yeah.
didn't really. There was a lot going on in that period. I don't think we really took time to like travel with the family at that point. It was like, you go figure out who you are, buddy.
Well, it was an identity crisis more than anything.
I
Yes.
bet. Holy
10
cow.
years, my whole adult career, my first baby, my first business, whatever else, and it was like my identity. And so
Yeah.
the worst question you could ask me is, what do you do? Because I didn't get to say I'm founder,
Yeah.
owner of this company and have all these employees. Like, my identity was tied to that, what I did,
Yeah.
not who I was. So I didn't know who I was. So I was doing a lot of personal development, a lot of soul searching. And I was like, what's next? And I was like, I don't know. I don't want to go back to door to door. And am I just a one trick pony? Like, does sales and business translate? So I literally took advice of a mentor, and he's like, dude, get out of your environment and go see what business is done like somewhere else. Where better than like go to the Mecca of business, go to San Francisco. So I went to San Francisco for a week,
Yeah.
and I knew I had a few contacts there, and I just networked through them, and I went and met with maybe 20 different businesses, entrepreneurs, over coffee, over whatever. I met with a big nonprofit, some crazy rooms that I got in, and I just asked them questions. Why do you do what you do? Why do you like what you do? What is
Yeah.
it that got you into that? What do you not like about it? And I'm just trying to figure out, what do I like about that? What do
Yeah.
I know? Like, how could I add value?
Yeah.
Right? They're like, what are you looking for? I was like, I don't know. That's why I'm here.
That's crazy.
So-
So you're going through this, and that's got to be kind of hard because it's a little bit of an unstable situation, and you're just watching this happen. It's like, you know who you are, right? At that time, did you have any kids yet?
Yeah, we had.
Yeah. So
one.
you're a mom, and you're a supporter, and you're like, this dude who I've married and known forever is kind of a different person now, I suppose. So like, I guess what was kind of like the help to finally figuring out something to do, or I guess
Yeah.
find it.
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up.
Yeah.
It's his favorite question that he gets asked. People are always like, what do you do? And he's like, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, because I don't feel like I got back into a thing. And I
Oh,
feel
okay.
like people are usually looking for like this is what I do.
Okay.
And I've realized that like I didn't ever want to be pinned into like just this. Even
Yeah.
though I know there's some value in being the specialist in the thing,
Yeah.
I love the freedom and the variety. and the uncertainty,
Yeah.
which is a sick thing for me to like.
Yeah.
But that uncertainty of not knowing, right,
Oh,
I
okay.
think is something that's there. And so since then I've gotten involved and I've done a few different businesses, some of them which I don't even remember probably, but
Yeah.
but like I started doing some coaching consulting a couple years after that. I started doing hard money loans and got into the finance game and just raising money and putting it with investors and different things, syndicating funds. I still do that randomly for different projects.
Okay. Nice.
And buying real estate, I had 5 doors and now I'm at 65 doors. Okay. More headaches, more challenges, more whatever. I bought a metal fabrication company. So I just, I started and becoming more of an active investor. I had a bunch of money put with a financial advisor at the time. I was like, well, I've got time now, so let me take that back and see if I can invest myself and learn and how I can do this, whatever. And so
create with it.
Yeah.
I love that.
So that's kind of been the path.
So I love, so that's kind of what he did. At the end there, he said metal fabrication company. So as a spouse, as someone who's doing stuff like this, I mean, it's no longer, hey, he works for a company and you could, like the difficulties are somewhat expected, or, hey, there can't be a random problem that comes out of left field. Like we have a general idea of the problems that can come. Now, when you transition to something like that, you can have problems come from anywhere, right? And it could be kind of versatile, I suppose. So as a supporting wife, and then also eventually you become ambitious and do your own thing, we'll talk about here in a second. How is that seeing a spouse go through that period of like just, okay, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this?
I do think that one thing that we have done really well, and I will say Jeremy has led this, is he does have vision. He's always had vision. I come from a little bit of a different background than he does, and so that was a little bit more challenging for me until he taught me. But we always had conversations around, what do we want our life to look like? Where do we want to go? What do we want our relationship to look like? What do we want time to look like? And so because we had the thing that we always were looking for, it made the hiccups and the fears really pretty simple to move past, honestly.
Yeah. Well, you kind of had this good track record of being able to provide what you promised, right? You said you created this vision and then you fulfilled on it, and then you create a new vision and fulfill on it. And so for you, that was something that's very comforting. Like, hey, he's done what he said he's going to do very many times, to the point where you kind of now trust his opinion, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So how long after you kind of made that big transition period before you decided that you wanted to start something on your own? What was that period like?
Well, you've started a number of things on your own.
I did start a number of things. I think watching Jeremy just like have a dream and go after it and have these conversations, and honestly, because of where he was, I was put into rooms with high level people, and I loved it. Like I was attracted to that. But I didn't understand like how I could ever be there. So I just tried like random things. I grew up dancing my whole life. Like I actually I had a few random jobs when I was a kid, but I didn't understand like where he loved earning money. To me, I was just like, I'm just going to go dance my whole life, Yeah. So,
real quick, what was the biggest dream and ambition you had? Like, you mean like cheerleading for the Dallas Cowboys,
sure,
or like?
I would have loved that. Yeah, I actually did. I used to watch that show on TV, and that would have been great. I don't know. Back then, it was So You Think You Can Dance was still big, and Dancing with the Stars, and but I didn't have like big dreams. My big dream was to get married and have kids. Like that's kind of what I was shown, especially in the culture here in Utah, and so to me it was like, oh, well, I'm just gonna get married and have kids. Like that's what I'm gonna do. And then I realized I'm kind of bored.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And again, being in these rooms with these people, that just the way they thought and their ambitions and their dreams and what they could create was so fascinating to me. And so I tried.
You got your fitness.
Yeah, let's hear about kind of these things.
I was obsessed. I've always been obsessed with fitness.
Nice.
So I got certified to teach group fitness, and then I hated that. And then I went to aesthetic school, and then I was like, this sucks. I hate the service industry.
After aesthetic school, started an
I did start an esthetician
business,
business.
started waxing and doing.
So you probably didn't like the idea of being employed. Like, okay, I don't
No.
want to work.
No.
Like,
No, that was never an option.
That was never an
As an
option. Well,
esthetician,
and
yeah.
just being married to him, like he was like, you are not
No.
working for
Right.
If you're gonna do
Like-
it, you're gonna do it on your own.
Well,
There you go. Yeah,
and-
exactly.
And like having a little bit of financial stability, even though you're an entrepreneur, like he knew how to make things happen. If worse come to worse, he could go make money, right? Like he was like, you're wasting your time making $12 an hour. Like this is so stupid. You're not doing
Take
it.
risks, right?
Take
Yeah.
risks. Like
And
come
so
on.
you're,
And I was
you're
like, okay.
encouraging it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
100%. I would not be where I'm at without him for sure.
That's awesome. And so you started your
So
own
I started a spa.
spa. There we go.
Yes, a spa, and did waxing and nails, and I just hated it. Honestly.
Because you were putting in the work, huh?
I was putting in the work, but I also wasn't. Like I just wasn't passionate about it. Like posting on social media and like getting clients. Like it was not appealing to me,
Yeah.
honestly.
And so I guess just a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people will start a company and because they think like there's things that are attractive about it, right? There's probably
Yeah.
things that are attractive about the spa business. And you wanted to kind of seek after that. But then you go down that road long enough to the point where you realize, oh, there's actually a lot of things about this that I don't like.
Yeah.
And they feel kind of stuck, right?
Yes.
And so I guess for you, was it like the business side of it? Or I guess how long did it take for you to realize, oh, this is actually not something that I'm passionate about or want to do?
Honestly, it didn't take that long. It was number one, the type of people I was around, and culture is really big for us in our life and how we build what we build. Culture is everything. Even when we did have the door-to-door sales company, it was all about culture. Like who are we around? That is what is inspiring to both of us. And so even when I started the spa and the clients that I would take in, it was just like, this is not the type of people that I want to be around. And so the amount of work that it's taking to like attract this clientele is like not great for me.
Yeah.
So it was really all of it, but
It was
more
kinda
than
conflicting
anything, it
with-
was culture. Yeah.
It was conflicting with the people, the culture that you were so used to. So that ended up, you just kind of dissolved that. You're like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
done with that. But I'm guessing that kind of desire to do something more was still there. So what was the next step after that?
I really wanted to make my own money.
Oh,
Like I
okay.
really wanted to just be like, I want to be able to buy whatever I want, when I want, and not have to
That
ask
was,
him
that
about
was the
it.
challenge, is that her driving force was that.
Oh.
And when the money
That
didn't
is
come
a
in,
huge
when the money
reason.
didn't come in fast enough,
I was annoyed.
she was annoyed.
It was annoying.
And then I'd be driving her like, go post, go talk, go do this, do
Yeah.
some marketing,
Yeah.
do some
Because
things.
you want this money,
Yeah.
and I know
want
what it
the
takes to get
money.
there.
Well, I set up the LLC. I bought all the freaking equipment. It's in a room. It's ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but she just didn't get money fast enough.
I didn't get money fast enough. I mean, that's not the
And she
only
didn't
reason,
love it.
But I didn't
But
love
she
it.
was good at it.
But it's
So
one of the first lessons that entrepreneurs
Yes.
learn. They say, hey, a lot of people on social media right now, they want to be an entrepreneur. They put it as their tag on Instagram, and they're doing it for all the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Now, they might have some good reasons too, but the money idea, right?
The
And
money
so you learn
is
that.
all the wrong reasons.
You learn that pretty fast. So, but you still you wanted the money, but at the same time, you probably now you learn the lesson. Hey, I want the money, but I want to couple it with something that I'm passionate about.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
What was the solution for that?
That's great. I took a break from trying to build anything for a while, and it was just, who am I? What do I provide? I think I did get really down on myself after those things, and seeing how successful he was at just like, honestly, pretty much everything he puts his hand to. He's had a lot of failures, but he does just hustle and grind and figure things out. To me, failing at two things was like, man, I suck. Like, I don't have any skills, you know? And just really sitting with that for a long time of like, okay, what am I good at? Like, can I capitalize on what I'm good at, even if it doesn't make any money, right? Being a good mom, creating culture, building relationships. And I hired my first coach in that time period to really help me identify some things going on in my life, right? And who I was and what my purpose was on this planet. And through that, it was just identifying, okay, I attract people who want support. I'm really good at supporting people. How can I monetize that? Like, how can I monetize supporting people? Okay, interesting. I don't really know yet, but it was just trying to like, how can I create a business around who I am?
Yeah.
And
Love
that's what Gentle Warrior is now, right?
Yeah.
So I just worked on myself, worked on healing, which is what I do now. Healing past traumas, my relationship with Jeremy, how we communicate, parenting, obviously things in my life. And I found I attract women who want the same thing.
Nice.
So there's a few experiences. Actually, once we were in Mexico on our anniversary trip, and we were sitting in the hot tub, and this random girl within 10 minutes of being in the hot tub, who I had never met, is in my arms crying about all this hard stuff that was going on in her life. And I was like, this is the most fascinating thing, that this person I don't know at all is now bawling in my arms. And that happened a lot.
And you embraced it.
I learned to embrace it.
Yeah, you weren't like pushing it away.
No.
You're like,
no.
hey.
It turned into a beautiful experience.
I learned to embrace it. And I just noticed like, okay, women are really drawn to me because I'm authentic and I just say things how they are and I can communicate with them and all of these different things. And so it became, how do I monetize this? Well, I build a group of women, right? I build a coaching group. I help women communicate all these questions they're asking me. How do I talk better to my husband? How do I be a better mom? Like things that they had observed that I had built in my life.
Yeah.
How do I do that? And so then I created Gentle Warrior.
Well, I love how you mentioned first is that you first took the money out of the equation and you said, what am I good at? What am I passionate about? And then you found that and you said, cool, I want to do that. But, no one wants to work for free, period.
Yeah.
And so you said, cool, how can I do that but make some money? Now, it sounds like almost you were at the point too. It's like, I don't need to make like money.
It wasn't about that.
Yeah, I think that was like, hey, how can I monetize it so that way I can grow it and I can help more people?
Yeah.
That's what I'm guessing.
Well, and what I do for me, it's like if I'm helping people, advice is one thing, but when you're paying it for advice, people actually do it.
Oh.
Right? So at that point it was thinking in terms of energy for me. Okay? So if somebody's coming to me and wanting my advice or to talk about something and I'm helping them, likely they're just going to go on their merry way and do whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
But if they're investing in that advice, they'll actually do it because I know what I'm telling them can help change their life.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And you were sick of you were sick of like helping people, like giving them what they needed, but maybe they just weren't in a place yet.
Yeah.
Or they just weren't serious enough.
Yeah.
And they weren't taking actions on it. It's like, hey, this advice is good stuff. Like I need to couple it with people who are ready to receive it.
Yes.
And that's kind of the idea of putting your money where your mouth is. Right?
Exactly.
I love that. So you found the skills and you decided to hone in on them. You being an entrepreneur, being successful in other businesses and stuff like that, I feel like it's the classic like teacher-student thing where a lot of times if like a really good friend or a spouse, usually like good friends and stuff like that, are starting something, you want to step in and like take over or like help them, right? How did you do how hard was it for you to like say this is her thing and I'm going to just support her like she supported me for many, many years before?
Yeah. It was a challenge, right? At first, where I had to be very cognizant, and it took a couple. And I would say it was pretty quick. You tell me. Honestly, we haven't had this chat, but I felt like at the beginning, she wasn't really in it for the money. She was very passionate about like I've had this growth. I've overcome some massive challenges in my life, and people are coming to me, and I can help people. And she was also looking to create something that didn't exist as far as a community. And so when I saw like that's where it is. I from day one was like, look, if I try and put a money thing on this, it's going to ruin what she's trying to build. But I knew it could be monetized, right?
Yeah.
And I was already coaching. And so she kind of had a model of what that looked like from what I've been doing for a few years. And so, when she brought that to me about what she was doing, she'd come up with a name, she'd come up with an idea, she'd come up with a structure, she'd come up with a concept. And I think she purposely wanted to like figure a lot of that out before she came to me because she didn't want me to like try and tell her how to do it.
So you did that kind of like in secret almost.
Yeah, well, because in the past I would bring him things. He'd be like, well, what's your business plan? Well, how are you going to do it? Well, Like, that's not going to work. And I was just like, I don't want to talk to you because I don't know the answers to all those questions yet. So I'm going to figure all the answers out before I come to you.
But it sounds like you're excited about it, and you're like, I want to like develop it and keep working on it before you kind of sought help or whatnot.
Yeah, and I think there was some positive feedback she had taken from the way I was kind of critical. Like, hey, did you think about, because a lot of times people come with a business idea of like, this sounds fun. And I'm like, cool. And you want to make it a business. Well, fun and business, they can go together, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
Asking critical questions to help you identify, is it really a business, right? But she had figured this out. She was passionate about it. I knew it. I could tell from day one. And I was like, how can I help?
Yeah.
Right? And there were times, I think at the beginning, where I was giving advice and she's like, you're talking to me as if I don't know. And so I would be very careful to ask a question. What are you trying to accomplish here? How can I help here? What are you looking for here? And
is
so
there a
like,
story that you could think of where like he kind of like overstepped, or like you were just like, this is my thing?
Oh gosh, that's a great question.
I hope she can't.
I actually do think there is.
Okay, let's go. Bring it.
I do remember when I brought it to him pretty early on, he goes, you don't want to do this. This is harder than you think it is. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Nice.
And I think by that point, I had observed him enough. And it was, to me, it was like, well, you became successful because you failed so many times. So instead of bringing something to him, trying to be like, this is why it will work, if I'm okay with failing and just like messing up, then I can build from something.
Nice.
Right? And that mindset perspective really helped me, instead of like, I'm not trying to impress him anymore, which I had been in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, this is what I want to do, regardless of whether you think it's a good idea or not. And I'm going to do it. And to be honest with you, actually, a lot of people were like, okay, like you might make some money doing it, but not as much as I have.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And so you come to the terms with the idea like, hey, I'm okay if this doesn't work out. But because it was surrounded by something you're passionate about, you still wanted to try.
Yes.
She would have done it for free.
I would have.
Getting paid was a bonus. It justified her time away from the house and the family and whatever else. And it also solidified people's commitment, which was a big part that we had talked about a lot. Because I had been in the coaching, and it's like, look, you can charge a really small amount and people won't take it as serious. You charge a higher amount, they take it more serious. They spent their money, they want to implement that and get their return.
Was that scary for you? Like when you kind of realized, oh my gosh, like a lot of times when people have a passion project that they want to provide to people, like you said, you realize pretty early on that they have to have some skin in the game to have an investment and commitment. But when push comes to shove and you have to actually start asking for the order, and you have to actually, how is that? Or maybe do you have like a story from the beginning when like you had your first person sign up and they like, you told them, okay, this is how much it costs? Anything around those?
Yeah, it was really nerve-wracking for me. He actually was very supportive and just like, whatever you think is worth your time. Like, whatever you think is worth your time. And I had figured out, this is the amount of time that it would take, and this is how many hours I would need a babysitter, and it's actually not going to take that time away from the kids, or I'll do it when Nixon's at school, so I'm actually not even needing a babysitter, so it's not going to be all these things, right? However, I did have a lot of other friends in the industry who I did talk about things, and they were like, you can't charge that much. Like, no one's going to pay that.
Really?
Right. Where he was actually a little bit more supportive. And like, if that's what you feel like it's got to be, that's what it's got to be.
Nice.
You know? And it was scary. Actually, here's the thing. I launched my group and I made over $100,000 in 24 hours.
Wow.
So it was very successful the second I launched.
Because it was something that you saw, not only were you passionate about it, but you saw there was a gap in the market. There was something that was missing for women, and it was this idea of community, right?
And the market knew that she was the right person for that because of the way she had been living, the way she'd been showing up, the way she'd already been adding value in a way that people are like, you've already done that for me. You've already been that person. People that had already come to her were like, look, if you had a service, I would sign up for it. So it was already built in.
And that's the thing. It's one of those things where when you have a passion project like that, it's almost like your whole life has led up to that point,
Yes.
right? The way that you had been living your life and the work that you had put in before that. Like, sure, I'm sure it took, like, how many hours do you think it took to actually, like, find the logo, find the name? I mean, that was pretty insignificant, I'm guessing,
Pretty insignificant.
compared to all of the work that you put in to yourself,
Yeah.
becoming the person that could run a group like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And so I can only just imagine where you have all this tension. And just because I've thrown a lot of events myself and I've done a lot of things, you have so much tension. And then when you click the button to either post or go live, and you're just like, holy crap, I just did it. I'm sure you were by her side, right? Mm-hmm. And so how was that process after you clicked that button and the orders came in and you filled as many people as you needed to? I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of relief, but I mean, how did that work for you two?
I mean, it was super exciting. I remember we were in Vegas, and
good place to be during this time.
we were in Vegas, and she had this goal. She had this idea. She was gonna launch. She was gonna do her thing, and she's like, we were just window shopping, and she was showing me this purse she wanted, and I'm like. And she likes fancy stuff. We both do, but she definitely does.
We both do.
Yeah.
And we had looked at this purse, and it was this, what's the brand?
Chanel.
A Chanel bag.
Okay.
And it was like $9-10 grand.
Yeah.
And it's like this big. And I'm like, you can't even fit 10 grand in that thing. You know what I mean? Like
maybe a gold bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're designed for.
Yeah. And she walked out. She like went through the whole thing. They treated her great. They gave us drinks. I sat on the couch and chilled or whatever else. And, you know, she took some pictures of it and whatever, and then left. And she's like, man, someday, you know. And I was like, do you like it? And she's like, yeah. She's like, but I can't get it. And I was like, but how could you? And she's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, why don't you put an incentive for yourself? There's a way you could have it.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think we want to spend that. It's not in our budget or whatever else. But what would be a good incentive if you could hit X amount of dollars as you launch your group? Then you could reward yourself with this. It's your first business. You reward yourself. You're doing something scary. You're taking a risk, whatever else. Like that was a huge way that I motivated myself along the way. It was like, once I hit this milestone, I'll do this thing. And
well, we learned that from sales.
the more bread you have, the less shit you taste and the shit sandwich of life.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I felt like that was a great thing. And we had a great discussion. It was a great lesson. It was a great experience at that moment. And we came up with a shared goal. Mm-hmm. She launched the next day, and we went back in, and she bought that thing because she literally just hit her numbers. So it was amazing. It was really cool.
You'd been a coach for a few years at that point, and so you kind of had that, I guess, idea. And so when you're starting to fulfill, I mean, you're still a mom, right? Here's the thing. Tell me if I'm lying here. Everyone always underestimates how much time it takes to start a business.
Oh.
Did you feel like you underestimated your time a little bit?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So how fast did it take you to realize that it was requiring a lot more time than you anticipated?
Pretty fast.
Yeah. So what are some of the lessons that you guys learned as a couple, I suppose? Because you're doing your own things at this point. You have a lot of different ideas. You're a mother, which is so much work. And then you're also now a business owner and a coach group and in charge of women and who are putting their faith and trust in you. And a lot more of a sense than, no offense, but in that kind of coaching that you did, it's like a very different idea. So what are some like the lessons or the things that you learned as you guys were working on it together?
Yeah. Well, it brought us closer together.
Did it?
Yeah. It bonded us in a way that our relationship never, I don't think, could have done in any other way. So there's a relatability factor, right? Yeah. She supported and was a part of all the businesses. Let's be honest. She was my partner in all those things. She played a completely different role than I did. She didn't know the things that I did, but she played her part, right? I think the other day I came home and I was sitting out on the front porch dealing with some bankers and some finance stuff. And I'm like, she came out, she's like, how you doing? I'm like, I don't want to be an adult right now. Can you do this part of adulting? She's like, no, I don't know anything about that adulting. You deal with that. I'm going to go deal with this. Right. Yeah. So there's the things where it's like, this is my thing. This is her thing. And we both thrive in those things. But then there's the parts where we overlap, where it's like, you know, she's struggling with this challenge and supporting people and motivating people and refilling her cup and making sure that she's able to show up in the way that she can. And it just became beautiful. It bonded us in a way that we never could have bonded, and relating to each other, supporting each other, giving each other advice. Now it's like, I could go to her in my other businesses and be like, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. And as much as I valued her thoughts and opinions, she just didn't understand in a way that she could give advice that would really support me.
Yeah.
Right. And so that could even turn into contention at times because it's like, well, that guy's an idiot. Let him go. And I'm like, no, not that far. You know,
Yeah,
now
exactly.
I'm defending the guy I'm complaining about, right?
Yeah.
But in this situation, it's like, oh, I get that.
Yeah.
And I'm here for you. And here's what I would do. And here's what I've done in the past. And so it was so beautiful in that way. And then seeing her thrive and seeing her in her purpose and seeing her making an impact, it just, not that I didn't respect her before, but my respect just grew. My love just grew. My admiration just grew. And I became a cheerleader, a champion. And then I understood how much it meant to have her supporting me along the way. And so it's like, how can I return that?
Yeah, you're given the gift of being able to see from her shoes how to be a supporting role.
Yeah.
And so how did it feel going from a supporting role with like limited knowledge into his background to now, I mean, you've been an equal this whole time, but now in the business side of things, you're very much more an equal. How did that feel?
I would just have to agree with Jeremy. I think it just understanding. And when you understand somebody, you can love them deeper. Right? So it just brought us from being, even though we make that joke that literally happened the other day where it's like, you do that adulting, I'll do this adulting, right? But we're very much connected. Like, it is more of a team than it ever was. It's more of a we when it was just two separates now. And it's been game changer because it feels like we can build something together rather than you go build that and I'll stay over here and take care of this, right? It's like, okay, where are we at? How can we support each other? How can maybe I step up financially or you step up at home or all of these different things, which is beautiful.
It's kind of like a bunch of levers now, and you can, like, instead of being like one lever that one person can pull at one time, you now introduce a whole bunch of different ones and you guys have access to all of them. And it's the idea of like, okay, how can we balance this and make something better? Now bringing that that business mindset and everything to the family. I mean, I'm sure you guys' relationship is better. The family can only, I'm sure, get better because of it.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, to add to what you said, I laugh because one way I know for a fact that like I do parenting a lot different way than my wife or adulting is I was changing my son's diaper. My son's name is Nixon, by the way.
Same.
Ours too.
Yeah. And so I literally was changing my boy's diaper. I'm like, I don't think I've changed a diaper in like a week. I was like, holy crap. Like, that means my wife has been changing all of the diapers for like a whole freaking week. And I was like, I've got to step up in this. And maybe there's some other things I'm blinded to and step up in those ways. And so my wife did sales pretty early on as well. And she traveled the country and did sales. And I always tell people like that was a huge help for us because until that happened, I would complain about a customer and she's like, wouldn't necessarily see that same. But then when she would do sales and she'd go to doctors' conferences and she's working with idiot doctors, it's kind of one of those things where it's like you become best friends with someone when you can hate on the same person.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we could like hate on sales or we can hate on business or whatever like
misery.
that. Sharing misery. Yeah. Not that you want to hate on anyone specific, but that shared misery and that shared, I guess, grind is ultimately what kind of can bring people together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, are there any other kind of lessons or things that you guys have learned now that you're both entrepreneurs and parents and that you feel like would be really helpful for people who are maybe getting started?
I think what's been big for us is we've started to become more aware of like what we're doing and why we're doing it and trying to teach it to our kids. Okay. I think a big focus for us right now is our children and realizing how big of a duty and responsibility it is and how freaking hard it is. And like the areas we see we're messing up and we could be better and like, man, we haven't dealt with this situation yet. What are we going to do in this situation? But I think it's even further the chance of our kids picking up on these opportunities and these lessons to think like an entrepreneur. And I am a huge fan and proponent of entrepreneurs, and I know that's what your podcast is about. And so my advice around that is truly encouraging others to catch the vision of that. I think it's what makes the world go round. I think it's what's blessing all of our lives. And if you look at the impact that it has, in our individual lives, in our communities, and in our world, it's massive. And so if we can teach those principles to our kids, learn how to overcome objections, how to have mental, the mindset that it takes, the discipline that it takes, the vision that it takes, and creating a culture and providing a good experience. Those are the lessons that we're really focused on learning right now and trying to dive into.
That's amazing. Now, obviously, your dad kind of instilled this entrepreneurial mindset into you as well. You mentioned earlier that you came from a completely different background. So now that you've embraced it and accepted it wholeheartedly, how has that kind of changed how you're also looking at teaching your kids and your family?
I think my dad was also an entrepreneur, but the way that it was done was very different. And I think for us it's changed my mindset to be just like we started this conversation around me and what I've built, right? It's not about money. It's about creating the life that you want. And for us, being an entrepreneur is the best way that you can do that. And so that, in my opinion, would be the lesson, right? Like the one thing that we have done consistently and gotten better and better at is having the conversation around the vision and the culture that we want to create together and the life that we want to create. It's not about the money, right? It's not about building something to look like we're an entrepreneur. It's about what fits in the lifestyle that we want.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And the kids are going to be blessed for it, right? Because they're going to learn valuable skills that you can't learn anywhere else, right? No, I love that. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. I mean, your guys' example is what drew me to you, and the way that you guys have been living your life. And I know social media only posts like the positive things, but dang, you guys have a lot of positive things. So it's got like,
We do.
you got a lot of them. So at least most of them are probably sticking, right? And obviously we know a lot of the same people, so I'd hear things from them too. And so the example that you guys are putting out, I know is helping so many people, right? So thanks again for coming on.
Yeah,
Thanks for
having
having
us.
us.
It was
Thanks.
great.
Awesome.